All right, we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my live Q&A. Let's get started here. I haven't done one of these in a long time, aside from when we just do it on the Legends podcast for the sake of, doing that sort of thing. So, yeah. How you all doing? Let's get the, now I gotta figure out how to get the comment section actually going. It's the funny thing with two monitors on your YouTube. Yeah, I got StreamYard on one monitor and YouTube on the other, which is pretty rad. I got 3 people watching. So if you want to ask me questions, go for it. If not, I'll just do a little status update, more like what I'm working on at the moment. Because there's like a pile of things that I've been working on, but unfortunately, someone decided, oh, yeah, school exists. Yeah, what a concept in the apocalypse school. School still exists and is very much a difficult, obnoxious thing, mainly because there's no actual class. So it makes things really, really fascinating. Okay. Quality Autism joins us, and it's midnight where he is. I'm shocked he joined us. I'm sorry, dude. I always forget how different your time zone is. Brian from Twin Suns is also here. Hey, man, cannot stick around. Did you see uh, the billboards were up? We talked about it on the podcast, but since then, no, not so much. I've been really busy with my draft. Only J Man says, "Hey man, glad to catch the live stream. Thank you for joining us." As in me and some people watching. Um, but yeah, I was gonna get into just some reviews that are coming up. I got 4 Star Wars reviews that just need to be filmed. Uh, the first being the Stealth and Siege duology, which I've been putting off for 6 months. I've filmed 2 different versions of it, and they've turned out like garbage, just like the books. I don't know. Karen Miller's just a terrible writer. That's all there is to it. But also, I have a Revenge of the Sith novelization review and Darth Maul Shadowhunter, and then I'll be caught up on Star Wars until I actually listen to Rise of Skywalker. And I got some alien stuff in the can. I'll just keep that to myself because I don't know. I have it written down how many I have, but there's at least 5 of them that are done and need to be reviewed. Let's catch up on some comments. Quality Autism. Did you know that the new Jedi Order Destiny's Way established that Mara Jade calls Luke Master Skywalker in the bedroom? No, I did not, but that's pretty good. Only J-Man, have you read near enough all of the adult EU novels? Not really. I own a lot of them, but I have not read what I consider to be enough. Uh, if not, how many do you have left to go? Like 50 at least. Most of Post Jedi. Yeah, yeah, most of my reading has been like my establishment in the EU from when I was a child was reading the comic books. So I've read most of what Dark Horse has ever published. Um and I've read a lot of the young adult stuff, but with the adult stuff that's been more of my focus in the last probably 5 years of reading. If you said new canon, I've read basically every one of those awful books. Bryant's Nerd Pub says, "What's up?" Nothing much. Got on here basically on time, so I'm pretty stoked about that. Quality Autism only has 5 books left to read. That's awesome, dude. I'm just taking my time because who knows when Disney feels like actually releasing some new EU stuff, which they probably will. They can't just refuse to do that forever. It's not in their best financial interests, especially when they made a movie that's barely a film and that is universally seems to be hated. And it's not the first one they've done, and that people, I think the majority of people are not satisfied with their new canon. Even if they do their High Republic nonsense, I seriously doubt that they will actually, like, win new people over. It just is like, it looks like a joke. And that's kind of mean to say, but at the same time, they've treated Star Wars like it's a joke, and you can piss off all of your fan base doing that. So, yeah. So what happens when you don't have a plan to do anything? Leads to absolute schlocking chaos. But yeah, my first order of business, though, with the channel is actually getting the last 2 Legends podcasts on actual podcast format, which is converting the video over to just audio and putting them through Spreaker and having them distributed that way. That'll probably be this week. I'll just do both of them at once. And you'll have like a twofer if you're still working and you have a commute, you can listen to the Legends podcast. Only J Man says, I only started 2 or 3 years ago and have read 11 or so. Currently taking a break from Scoundrels, which I will start again to read. Darth Plagueis 90 books plus on the shelf. Nice. I hate Scoundrels with the white hot intensity of 1,000 Suns. That book is probably, well, I can't say it's the worst now because Zahn wrote Thrawn Alliances and Thrawn Treason, and those are borderline unreadable and just nonsensical crap. But Scoundrels was just a continuity, just disaster, in my humble opinion. It basically took Rebel Dawn and just crapped all over the ending between Han and Lando. And to me, it damages the character of Lando. Quality Autism says, we'll read the Clone Wars Gambit duology soon. Have to reread the first 3 Travis Miller books, though. You actually don't have to read the Clone Wars movie novelization. It's not necessary. If you remember because in all honesty, they only reference the battle at the beginning for the most part and the losses they had, which you don't really even get out of the movie. But like, I remember the movie somewhat. So there's that. But you should read Karen Miller's Wild Space, but just that's like the only one. No Prisoners is not referenced, period, in Stealth or Siege, which is really unfortunate. It's another reason I don't like Stealth and Siege, because that's the only one of those books that's actually worth reading, and Karen Miller didn't reference it. Also, literally nothing except for what Karen Miller wrote herself and the Clone Wars movie and season 1 of the Clone Wars are referenced in her books. And even then, in Stealth and Siege, the Clone Wars series is not referenced. I think it's rarely referenced. The only thing worth actually reading those books for is Ahsoka's arc, of all things. she and Obi-Wan's like lover of the week, because yeah, Karen Miller did that so we could have another Obi-Wan love interest, but it's more like they were friends with benefits. She her name's Taria Damson, and she and Ahsoka team up because Ahsoka gets like really mangled in the beginning of Stealth. That's like kind of the catalyst and why Obi-Wan and Anakin are teamed up and like on the mission. Which I'm just spoiling the first chapter. The whole book's like garbage. There's some really stupid stuff in it that I won't spoil. I'll save that for the review. But like Ahsoka and Taria are off on like a side mission that is far more interesting than the actual plot of those books. Which their mission kind of ends in Stealth, I do believe. Siege, they're teamed up with Mace Windu, and it becomes like another boring subplot that you don't care about. The only other thing with that duology and Wild Space is Padme does things in those books. Like she's actually important to the plot. She and Bale both are. But yeah. Moving on, Bryant's Nerd Pub says, favorite Batman graphic novel? Are you meaning like it was actually written as a graphic novel or a trade, like collected single issues? Because my favorite graphic novel, Batman, is called Son of the Demon. And it is about Batman and Ra's al Ghul teaming up in order to stop like terrorists or something. It was really, I read it a long time ago, but the art is just absolutely beautiful. Also, it was, to me, it's what gave Grant Morrison the hint that Talia al Ghul and Batman would have a child together, because they're actually, it's not in continuity, but they got married and she was pregnant and she miscarried. So I think Grant Morrison got the idea of Damian Wayne from that. And Damian Wayne is my absolute favorite Robin because he's a little shit, but he's like competent enough to like back it up most of the time. Also, I find it really fascinating in the what if storyline of him becoming Batman and just being almost the Frank Miller style Batman, but with like his trench coat and like spiked brass knuckles. I don't know. I always like the look of that and just his attitude of things. But if we're talking collected edition, it's probably Hush. Hush is an awesome storyline. Rob D says, "Hey Jeremy, have you read the new canon Darth Maul comic? I'm up to issue 4. It's all right. I hated it. I fundamentally hated it, and I will talk about it. I was going to review it like 2 years ago, but I'm glad I didn't, because it rips off plot points of Shadowhunter and just shits all over it. It's so awful. But the sad thing is, it's one of the better Marvel Star Wars miniseries they've done. Because some of those are so unbearable to read. Just sheer crap. The Mace Windu one really is bad. That's probably the bottom of the barrel of the ones I've read. But I haven't read all of them because I just gave up after a while. Only J-Man, I'm only really interested in old EU. Is there any reason to watch the Clone Wars? I hear it damages Legends continuity, so I should just stick to Legends novels to Clone Wars era. The problem with that, and Dylan and I did a Legends podcast about this. Unfortunately, you can't ignore Dave Filoni's Clone Wars, because there are at least 5 books that directly are influenced, that are tie-ins to the show, on top of several comic book series and novels like Kenobi, Darth Plagueis, just to name a few, like really good ones. Oh, Fate of the Jedi, that whole series, they all reference the Clone Wars, so you'll be lost. Plagueis, it'll be fine. You don't really need it for Plagueis. I happen to get the reference. It's very brief. Kenobi, it's a little weird if you haven't seen Clone Wars, but it's doable. But Fate of the Jedi, the climax of that series doesn't make sense unless you watch at least up to season 4 of the Clone Wars. But it's garbage. You can skip the last season though. The final season that we're on right now, which is the worst season of the entire series, is completely skippable because it is not part of the EU. It is not dual canon. But keep in mind that the events that happen in the show, specifically in the show itself, didn't necessarily happen in the continuity of the Star Wars expanded universe. And if you want more detail into that, the couple Legends podcasts ago, Dylan and I really go into detail about that. Jimbo Joe writes, hello, how are you doing? I'm doing great. Bryant's Nerd Pub just read Batman Hush. It was amazing. Yes, it is. That is some of the best comic book art in the last 20 years. Just a beautiful story to match. Quality Autism writes, just read Dark Horse Darth Maul comic where he goes after Black Sun. Pretty good stuff. Yes, it is. I actually just got that trade with the Marvel Epic Collection, The Rise of the Sith, Volume 2. I just picked that up for a really good deal. So I will be reading both of those volumes, and I'm pretty stoked because I have read almost all of that stuff like years ago when I was a kid, and I'm really excited to see what's good and what isn't. I think most of it's going to be good. I've started like reading the Tales stuff that's in the beginning of the first volume. That's crap, but that's Tales and it's to be expected. Jacob Ayers, what up, boys? Nothing much, my dude. Quality Autism, move Filoni's Clone Wars into S canon, and it's all fine. That is true. The fact that T canon exists was to stroke Dave Filoni's ego, because George, I think, kept him around because he made money. Even though that show fell apart in the ratings, each season it got worse. Jimbo Joe writes, did you read what George Lucas's original sequel trilogy plans were? Yeah, the thing with George is absolutely not reliable in anything he says. It's best to read other people's stuff that worked around George. He wanted the Wills to appear and act like they had a role in every event in the franchise. At least that's how I view it. That's not surprising. You can actually, if you read the novelization of the original Star Wars, it opens with a journal of the Wills. So the Wills were a thing in the EU. They just weren't really touched upon. Quality Autism writes, rumor has it Lucas also wanted the son of Mortis as the bad guy in episode 9. Why? The Mortis arc, I hate it, but I like Abeloth. So you gotta have it. It's dumb. It's better parts of Filoni's series, but I just don't get it. Only J-Man, thanks for the clarification. You're welcome. No problem. Glad to help when it comes to Filoni's Clone Wars. Jacob Ayers says, George was never going to make a sequel trilogy, in my opinion. I would agree, except for eventually he would need to, because he would have milked Star Wars out of its money for a time. Remember, the prequel trilogy came out after he had milked the original trilogy for all its merchandising worth. So that's why he made the prequel trilogy, and it's why it was like so merchandising. Like, look at the products that came out like for the Phantom Menace. The only thing that came worse is Disney doing the Force Awakens stuff. But he milked the prequels for all it was worth, and then in the middle of it started milking the original trilogy again, and then milked the whole saga. But eventually that would have probably around this time been out of money, and he would have like made another trilogy just to for merchandising purposes, because he is a businessman first. As much as he doesn't want to admit it, because he's like going through, I can't even call it a midlife crisis. You can't call someone going through a midlife crisis in their 70s. It's like a quarter life, like a 3/4 life crisis right there. Quality Autism asks, didn't George pump millions of dollars into each episode of the Clone Wars near the end? It's not surprising. I don't know. I've never paid enough attention to the later Clone Wars making because it's so crap that I don't care. Especially like season 6, that half season with the droid squad, like just garbage. Only J-Man, me and my fiance are currently watching. She also has started reading EU. Could you convince her to read the Bane trilogy since it's amazing? You should definitely read the Bane trilogy. It's one of the best Star Wars trilogies out there. I'd put it better as a better trilogy than the Thrawn trilogy, although that's definitely a good trilogy. It's probably my favorite. It's my favorite part of the Old Republic, that's for sure, and that's saying something because I love Knights of the Old Republic, the comic series, and Old Republic Annihilation's also good, and the Tales of the Jedi comics are phenomenal. Let's see here. Jimbo Joe says, I've recently read Star Wars Thrawn by Timothy Zahn and enjoyed it. I'm interested in reading the sequels, even if they got a somewhat mixed reaction from the fans. Yeah, go for it. They're good companion pieces to Rebels, and that's unfortunately really like a detriment to them. Also, Thrawn Alliances is written horribly. It is the worst writing of Anakin's force powers I've ever read. It is so awful to read. Spencer from Star Wars Library. I actually met Spencer at Gen Con 4 years ago. Really great guy. Hey, brother. I can't stick around, so I'll have to watch later. Just wanted to say keep up the great reviews, my friend. I look forward to watching this. Thank you, dude. Good to hear from you. Jacob Ayers says, Jeremy, did you know George's son Jet has his own strain of weed he's selling now? That's funny. I remember Jet's the one who is the Padawan that gets gunned down in front of Jimmy Smits in Revenge of the Sith, if I'm not mistaken. Which is actually, out of all of his kids' cameos, that's the best one. The Phantom Menace cameos are awful, FYI. When Anakin and Kickster are working on Anakin's pod and everyone's there, and all the kids walk up that can't act. Yeah, those are George's, and I think Rick McCall, one of his kids, is in there too. Katie Lucas, I'm pretty sure, is the older girl in that, and Katie Lucas is on my shit list of people at Lucasfilm because of her disgusting epilogue in Dark Disciple. It's one of the most insulting things I've ever read. Rob D, do you think High Republic is going to suck? High Republic's I don't know. It seems like there's too many cooks in the kitchen for this, and some of them have not written anything good for the new canon, but they have all this creative freedom, and then Pablo Hidalgo's in there, so we all know Pablo is not to be trusted with anything Star Wars at this point. Only J-Man is the strain called Starkiller Kush. If not, it should be. Jacob Ayers, Jet is cool. He was an intern at LucasArts for a long time. Right on. 8080Q says, "Hey Jeremy, would you know if Shadow Games or Kenobi ever came out in the Sci-Fi Book Club form?" Shadow Games only came out in the Sci-Fi Book Club form. It did not get a hardcover release to the public. You had to get it through Sci-Fi Book Club, thus making it one of the rarest um, Sci-Fi Book Club Star Wars hardcovers that's just a single book. I have it. I've had two of them. They were very expensive. Kenobi, I don't think it did because by that point they really weren't doing much with Sci-Fi Book Club anymore. That was near the end of the EU, and you can tell when the new canon came up, there was like only two of the novels offered in the Sci-Fi Book Club, which was Dark Disciples and New Republic Bloodlines. Because I initially got New Republic Bloodlines through Sci-Fi Book Club, which was not in the book club size hardcover. They were in the standard size hardcover, so they had stopped doing that a long time ago. Yeah, oh god, quality autism's going into it with some Zahn quotes. Double vision, blaster fire is coming at me. That's like every time. It's like double vision this, double vision that. It's not just with Anakin, it's with Vader too, because it goes back and forth from past to present. And it's tedious, just absolutely tedious. Quality autism goes on to say, was Zahn trying to outdo Chuck Wendig? It felt like it. I was just waiting for their Star Destroyer to wibble and wobble, and then someone to say, "Oh, I haven't felt that since I was in space diapers," or something like that. Because, yeah, Chuck Wendig's a monster. Jimbo Joe asks, "Did you ever watch The Mandalorian?" I did, and he goes on to say personally that he loved it because it was something I've always wanted to see when it came to Star Wars. I thought it was okay. It was weird to see Dave Filoni direct live action. It was actually not bad. Um, his directing style's fine. It's just the show was mediocre. Also, the Mandalorians are more of a cult now and like never take their armor off. Like, what the hell? Also, it's getting old, this whole thing in the new canon that Jango and Boba Fett were never Mandalorians. That irritates me on so many levels as an EU fan. I mean, Boba Fett becomes Mandalore at one point. Like, they were searching him out for years for him to become Mandalore, and he didn't want to. He went into hiding as a child. But then again, the new canon is the same canon that the Mandalorians, which are a warrior race, were pacifists in the Clone Wars. Except for some of them weren't. Also, here's another continuity error with the Mandalorian to the Clone Wars. In the Clone Wars, they're taking their helmets off all the time. Yeah, Prima Vizsla has a duel with both Obi-Wan and then later Maul, and he's not wearing a helmet in those. It's so stupid. And in Rebels too, because you could say, "Oh, it's because Clone Wars is dual canon," blah blah blah. It's like, no. Look at Rebels. Sabine for most of the series doesn't wear her stupid helmet. Oh, God, so bizarre. But this is the way. Jacob Ayers writes, "Do you think Dash Rendar was a wasted character in the EU?" I wouldn't say wasted. Underutilized, definitely. He had his moment in the sun. Well, all of the Shadows of the Empire characters had their moments. I think what killed Shadows of the Empire was its awful comic sequel, Shadows of the Empire Evolution, with the Guri storyline, where she's trying to become like more sentient or whatever. That's stupid. Just a garbage series, and its placement doesn't make sense. And yeah, but there's a lot of Star Wars characters that are underutilized. Like Aura Singh was one. Until Filoni's Clone Wars, like Aura Singh, they hit a point and they just stopped using her. I mean, she shows up here or there, but she was supposed to be the next Boba Fett, and that never happened. I think that was what a lot of these characters were supposed to be, is like the next Boba Fett. Like, remember Jinx? Jinx was specifically a Shadows of the Empire comic character. He's not in the novel, but he was Vader's like right hand spy man that was like a spy for him. And Jinx barely got used ever. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. The Swoop Bike Gang was thankfully used by Ryder Winham later on in his Clone Wars YA series that's very underrated with the little Chiss Padawan. Uh, Quality Autism writes, what did you sorry. What did you think of Empire and Rebellion trilogy, Razor's Edge and Honor Among Thieves? Why was it even made? What purpose had it, or just why had it be set in the Rebellion era? Because everyone loves the Rebellion era if they're a casual. It was written for casuals to get into the EU. It's the same thing with having Choices of One and Allegiance and Scoundrels all in the Rebellion era. They don't need to be there. In fact, they don't. I've heard that Razor's Edge and Honor Among Thieves are pretty decent. I've never read them. I read Scoundrels and it turned me off from the Rebellion era, but that's also because I read Allegiance and Choices of One, and those are three of Zahn's worst EU novels. He like tries to contradict his own continuity, and it drives me absolutely insane. But yeah, I don't know. Things. It's the same thing with Brian Wood's Star Wars comic series, which that's the bottom of the barrel in the shit department. I wouldn't even wipe my ass with those comics. They're so awful. And why in the unholy fuck did they get reprinted in when Marvel did their epic collection of the Rebellion, like the Rebellion epic collection? Because they weren't canon. That was the most irritating part of them, and I didn't realize it at the time. I reviewed them as if they were C canon because they just regurgitated stories but made that were already written but made them shittier. I don't know. I don't know. To me, they should have stopped when Empire turned into the Rebellion comic series. They should have left the Rebellion era alone after that. If you want to put something in, don't have the movie characters. Don't do that. Do like something else. Because I mean, Allegiance, the vigilante stormtrooper thing, that's cool. Have Mara doing things like that's nice, but don't have Luke and Han and Leia in there. They have no business to. They have enough going on with the original Marvel comics because they made those C canon around the same time. So it's just like they never slept for 3 years on Luke and Leia and Chewie and the droids. They just never got a break. Jimbo Joe writes, have you read any good comics recently? I've been reading more IDW publishing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it's amazing so far. I highly recommend it, whether you're a TMNT fan or not. I have read some of the current IDW Ninja Turtles series, John, but it's been Jimbo Joe. I know Jimbo Joe and I went to middle school and high school together, so I know him outside of YouTube. I don't know if he wants me to use his actual name or not. Let me pull up real fast on Comixology. I read a comic the other day that was really funny because I read some wild things when I'm not reading Star Wars. It was this sci-fi comic. Let me pull it up. I've read some of the new Star Wars stuff. It's crap. Except for I read the Rise of Kylo Ren, and that wasn't so bad. Where is it? Gone Shooting is another one. It's not a new comic. It's pretty old. No, not Gone Shooting. Riding Shotgun. Gone Shooting is one of my favorite AC/DC songs. It's a very bluesy song they did with Bon Scott off of the Power Age album. Highly recommend that album. It's, in my opinion, the best Bon Scott released album from AC/DC. It's one of their better 70s stuff. Where in the I don't know where it is. Oh, that's bizarre. Sorry, this is really good video material, I know. But yeah, the I also read fairly recently William Gibson's Alien 3, which is basically not William Gibson's script. It's one of my pet peeves when someone says, "Oh, this is the unreleased script of of blah blah blah." Like when they released the Star Wars, and it's the original Star Wars script. No, it wasn't. It's several drafts combined together with someone else making a narrative. It's not George Lucas's vision. It's just some ideas thrown on paper, and it's utter crap. With William Gibson's Alien 3, it was fun, partly because they also did an audio dramatization where they brought back Michael Biehn as Hicks and Lance Henriksen as Bishop. And it is really well acted, and I highly recommend picking that up on Audible. The art's pretty good in it. I enjoyed it. Review will be coming up this summer for that. It was pretty good, but the comic I was looking for is I think it's a mini series called Money Shot. Money Shot is about a bunch of scientists that, in order to fund their program in the future, they have an online like webcam porn show where they fuck aliens. It sounds like just schlocky garbage, but it's really really funny. It's so far it's 5 issues. I don't know if they'll renew it for like a volume 2 because it's called volume 1, the collected edition of it. I love it. I've read a couple issues of it so far. It's pretty humorous. It's very adult though, so you're forewarned. But I'm also a guy who likes Patrick Nagel art and used to read Heavy Metal magazine on a regular basis, so that's more my taste. Let's get caught up on these things here. Blah blah blah. We'll start with Bryant's Nerd Pub asked, I should bring these up. I'm sorry. I should be giving you all the spotlight. If you could pick your own lightsaber color, what would it be? Purple. Absolutely purple. And when I go to Galaxy's Edge at some point, I'm going to build a purple lightsaber. If not, then maybe white. White is also a cool one. Aura Singh, Quality Art System says, Aura Singh had a somewhat cool cameo in Legacy of the Force. That's right. Forgot about that. She's also in Coruscant Nights. I remember that. Jacob Ayers, the ending of Shadows of the Empire Evolution was Dash trying to sleep with Guri. So yeah, it was pretty awful. Yeah, he was trying to work his charm on her. I don't know. That whole series is bad. 8080Q says Honor Among Thieves was decent. Razor's Edge, Allegiance, and Choices of One were pretty bad. I don't know. Honor Among Thieves. No, I'm thinking Scoundrels. My bad. Scoundrels is a pile of anal waste. Only J-Man says, are there any EU novels that are an absolute waste of time and you worsen the EU that you'd skip as a first-time reader if you'd known better? The Geeks Addict would tell you Crystal Star, but I think you should try any EU book. Some of them are worse than others, but if you have to skip some, skip any book written by Karen Miller. That's my advice. Jimbo Joe says, if you want to call me John, it's all right. Okay, John or Jonathan. I think you prefer Jonathan, as I recall. I remember you did when we were kids. 8080Q says, could you explain why the Brian Wood series isn't C canon? It's because of the continuity issues, or is there something official that was declared it out of canon. Courtney, so it was designed to be if you had just seen Star Wars in 1977, this would be the sequel. And Matt and a lot of people have interpreted as it not being C canon. I tend to agree because it contradicts a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily contradict, but it retreads a lot of things. And it's Brian Wood, and Brian Wood can't write anything. He has written some of the worst comics in general that I have ever read in my entire life. That's saying something because I read comic books written by Chuck Wendig. Jacob Ayers says modern Marvel Star Wars is awful. I wholeheartedly agree. You could say modern Marvel is awful, and I would also agree. I read the Poe Dameron comic, but it was so bad, it was canceled. That sad thing is, it was their best ongoing series. At one point, that was the case. Eventually, Charles Soule would write the second Darth Vader ongoing, and that was okay. Started off semi-strong for a Marvel comic, but as time went on, it got crappy. Quality Autism says, at 8080Q, I think Dark Horse themselves said after that series was finished that it wasn't canon at all. I think so. I would agree. Jacob Ayers, do you think the Terminator franchise should just die already? It should have died. It should have stopped with Terminator 3. I mean, they shouldn't have done Terminator 3, but they did. Because everything post that is utter garbage, to the point where every comic series is trash, every novel is trash, every movie is garbage, and especially the bottom of the barrel is the Sarah Connor Chronicles. If Dave Filoni's Clone Wars didn't exist, I would say the Sarah Connor Chronicles is the worst TV show I've ever seen in my entire life. Moving on. Jimbo Joe says, Jacob Ayers, as far as I know, Terminator Dark Fate's box office performance killed the franchise. Hopefully it stays dead. But Genesis killed the franchise, and they made another one. Quality Autism writes, the Terminator franchise got terminated. Too true. Look at that handsome face that Quality Autism has in this profile picture. Wonder who that is. Jimbo Joe writes, I still remember the opening scene of Dark Fate. Oof. I've heard about it. I refuse to watch Dark Fate. I've yet to see it, and I'm pretty happy with that. Jacob Ayers writes what I think everyone does now, which is stick to Terminator 1 and 2. I would go a little further and read the original Terminator comics. Those are pretty fun. They took place before Terminator 2, so keep that in mind. Because back in the day, Dark Horse owned like all these, had the rights to all 20th Century Fox properties to make comics out of. I mean, they started with Aliens, I think it was their first. Aliens, then Predator came not long after. Then they hit the bomb, like the money bomb with Dark Empire. Like what a good deal for them. made a shitload of money off of that, and just continue. Star Wars was, yeah, they fucked that up over time. Jake Bears then says the only good thing that came from the Terminator plot post 2 is the video games. I disagree. I don't think a good Terminator game exists, except for maybe Rise of the Machines was meh. It was an okay FPS. Took me about 5 hours to beat, if I'm not mistaken. But The Redemption was a terrible Grand Theft Auto clone. Dawn of Fate, I think, was one that was a really bad PS2 game. Salvation was a mediocre PS3 360 game. I can't think of really any good Terminator games. You know, I take that back. There is a good Terminator game, but it came out on the Sega CD, and it's the original Terminator on Sega CD. That's the best Terminator game that's ever been made. Probably the best Sega CD game that's ever been made, though, too. Except for maybe Night Trap. Night Trap's pretty funny. Rob D, do you think Disney is going to do anything with Alien, Predator, or Die Hard? They're R-rated franchises, and I doubt fans want more sequels based on their last entries. If they allow Ridley Scott to make another film, like he pesters them to make another one of his Covenant, like Prometheus films, then probably they will. I can tell you right now that David Blomkamp's Alien movie will never be made. Which Blomkamp's Alien movie was probably the closest thing we would ever get to seeing Earthhive being made into a movie, which is a shame because Earthhive is awesome. No, never make another Predator movie again after The Predator. That is one of the worst. That is the worst film of both the Alien and Predator in their combination of their franchises. It is awful. Jimbo Joe and I and Michael from Backpedalers and Game Pappy went and watched The Predator, and it was so unbearably bad. I was embarrassed to be there. And Die Hard's dead. It died pretty hard with A Good Day to Die Hard, so no. Plus, what are they going to put Joseph Gordon-Levitt as a young Bruce Willis? They already did that. It was called Looper, and it's shit. Going on to Only J-Man says, if any of you could pick one post-Return of the Jedi story to have been filmed with the original cast after the original trilogy had finished, while they were the right age, what story would you pick? I'm going to be spiteful and say Crystal Star, because Matthew is not watching the stream. Just saying. Moving on to Quality Autism says, are you looking forward to Zahn's new Chiss Ascendancy trilogy? No, I'm in the same boat as you. I don't give two shits and a rat's dick about it. Moving on to Jacob Ayers, to be honest, I've given up on Zahn, and to be honest, I think Lucasfilm will not renew his contract after this new trilogy. I don't think so. His name still sells books, and they let him do whatever he wants. Lucasfilm doesn't care right now about anything but High Republic and their TV shows. Quality Autism says the entire new Jedi Order series. That would have been an awesome HBO series. Honestly, though, I always wanted an animated movie of Shadows of the Empire, like hand-drawn animation. That would have been awesome, because you know that Mark Hamill would come back to be Luke. He loves voice acting, and I think you could have easily gotten both Billy D. Williams, Carrie Fisher, and also James Earl Jones and Ian McDiarmid. All of them. The only one who would be difficult is Harrison Ford, and Han Solo's not really in Shadows of the Empire, so there's that. Definitely Anthony Daniels would have come back, but that goes without saying. He's C-3PO, and he did Droids and the Clone Wars and Shinji Chertovsky's Clone Wars micro series. He's just C-3PO. Only J-Man says at Quality Autism, while that sounds amazing, I don't think it could have realistically happened unless you condensed it to one trilogy. Haven't read them, but looking forward to it. Okay. Just a TV show. Shannon McRandall. I don't care if she can't act, but she will always be what I picture Mara Jade being. Ever since that issue of Star Wars Insider where she modeled as Mara Jade. At Jacob Ayers, Quality Awesome System says, at Jacob Ayers, it should be an unknown actress and an actual redhead. 8080Q says, they would never get rid of Zahn. He's the only author they have that sells any books for them. Yeah, it's a shame because Claudia Gray can actually write twice as good as Zahn at this point, but she's not a known name from the EU, and Zahn is. Quality Autism says you could do a 2D animated show to adapt the entire post episode 6 EU storyline that would go on for over 20 seasons. Yeah, that'd be cool too. I just honestly I think classic animation's very underrated, and I would like a traditional looking like cartoon, like just a really well drawn cartoon for Star Wars, because in my opinion the best looking Star Wars cartoon was Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, but it's really stylized, and I think Star Wars could benefit from just a traditional looking, like maybe Disney-esque looking Star Wars cartoon with some grit thrown in. But yeah, they need to stop with this 3D crap, because Resistance is one of the ugliest things I have ever seen. I can't watch it because it looks so ugly. It looks worse than the early seasons of the Clone Wars, and that was ugly. Only J-Man says, make that happen. We should. Quality Autism says, shame about Alexander Freed. He has written the only Disney canon book I liked with Twilight Company. Yeah, his Alphabet Squadron, his bastardization of the X-Wing books with some of the worst characters I've ever read in a book, period, makes me want to barf. Brian's Nerd Pub, would you direct Death Troopers if asked? I don't know if I want to direct Death Troopers specifically, but zombies in Star Wars, that'd be fun. Did you watch my Zombies Ate My Neighbors trailer I made when I was in high school? Is that where this stems from? Or is it from just like the horror movies that I've directed in my goofy little student films? Quality Autism writes, I would love that animation to look like the Japanese covers of New Jedi Order. Those covers are some of the best looking Star Wars covers I've ever seen. Up there with the Brazilian Thrawn trilogy covers. Those are gorgeous too. Those are like paintings. But honestly, I don't know. Like, there's some good Star Wars covers out there, and there's some garbage ones. We've done many an episode on the Geeks Addicts channel of Judge a Book by its cover, which are really fun. Jimbo Joe writes, what are some good comics you've been reading recently? I already answered that. That would be Money Shot. Money Shot's really good, and Riding Shotgun. Other than that, I haven't read a whole lot of Star comics recently. Been reading more novels, and specifically nonfiction for school. Only J-Man says the Japanese covers are amazing, so jealous. Brazil gets amazing ones too. Yeah. We've gotten some good ones though too. I really like the Bantam era covers. They're gorgeous for the most part. Brian Surpub says, have not. I'll check it. I'll go check it out. It's some garbage, but you might get a kick out of it. Quality Autism says, at Only J-Man, except the Crucible cover, EU Luke doesn't have a beard. And that, in the original Crucible cover, he still doesn't. That was, they redid the art for Crucible when Force Awakens came out to market it for Force Awakens, like, new readers. And they made them look like they do in the movie. 8080Q says, did you ever collect any of the 1990s Decipher Star Wars card game? There is a documentary coming out soon, the history of that game. I had one booster pack. I was more into the movie trading cards. all of those burned in the fire, unfortunately. But like, yeah, I had some. I You have to understand, I was born in '94, so like trading card games were kind of beyond my comprehension till probably the mid 2000s. I was kind of into Yu-Gi-Oh for a hot minute, and then in my early college years, I went in like late high school, I got into Magic the Gathering like hardcore, to the point where all I did was Magic the Gathering and then drink. And yeah, it led to bad grades. So I quit. Jimbo Joe writes, I recently read Richard um, Matheson's I Am Legend. Great book, but the ending surprised me to the point where I was left speechless. Yeah, it's a great book. Um, Unfortunately, every movie made about that book is garbage, and they've made 3 of them, and they're just terrible. They get worse each time. I mean, the Will Smith one's probably the worst, because you had Last Man Left Alive starring Vincent Price, which is like it's a typical Vincent Price like horror film. He has his style of acting, and it's not for me a lot of the time. Then you had the Omega Man, which is bad all around, but I Am Legend is like just something else. That Will Smith movie. Ugh, I haven't thought about that in a long time. Jacob Ayers writes, Luke with a beard looks wrong, to be honest. I don't know. It makes no difference to me. Luke's character was wrong in Last Jedi, but that's neither here nor there. Quality Autism asks, have you ever read Fleming's James Bond books or just seen the movies? I've seen all of the movies, including Never Say Never Again, which is not considered canon, and the Casino Royale parody movie from the 60s, and the 50s teleplay of Casino Royale. I've seen that too. For the books, I've only ever read Casino Royale. I liked it. I liked it more than the movie, although I will say that that movie keeps the spirit of the book the best out of any of the James Bond movies. Uh, Brian's Nerd Pub says, have to go, but have one more question. What are your thoughts on those arcade game replicas that they sell at Walmart, or would you buy one, or if so, which? No, if you're talking about plug and play games, I'm not into plug and play games at all. I'm not really into most video games, if I can be completely honest, at this point in my life. I'm very picky about what games I play. So, yeah. I had a couple Atari PS4 ports. Like, I bought the discs a long time ago, which basically led to a very good port of Pong, but that was the only game I really played on there. Only J-Man says, do people, mainly non-EU fans, generally dislike the idea of Leia as a Jedi? To me, I've always got Force-sensitive vibes from her in the original trilogy. I mean, come on. She's Vader's daughter, after all. Yeah, I don't know. It made sense that she would get trained as a Jedi in Return of the Jedi when after watching it, like, their conversation, I'm like, of course she would be trained. And then the way they handled it in the new canon, well, first they claimed she never got trained. And then they contradicted themselves in Rise of Skywalker by saying she got trained, but she gave up and she gave me her lightsaber and like said someone else would continue her journey. Dumb. Next, Jacob Ayers says, no, I don't think people cared if Leia is a Jedi. No. Rob D, do you think the father, son, and daughter from the Mortis Clone Wars arc were real, or do you think they were just dreaming it? If you read Fate of the Jedi, that was something that happened. To the degree that the interactions happened at, I don't know. That would be up to other EU writers at some point when the EU's continued and Dave Filoni is banned from touching it to flesh out. Jimbo Joe writes, on the subject of James Bond movies, I saw a review on Die Another Day, and man, if the movie was released today, there would be controversy surrounding the main villain. Oh yeah, the main villain is a North Korean man who gets it's plastic surgery to look like a white man. Yeah, that's a thing that happens. Die Another Day is also the absolute worst James Bond film ever made. It's also the only James Bond film where he's being chased by a laser beam and is surfing on a melting glacier. There's a reason Pierce Brosnan never did a James Bond movie after that. It's also why the franchise died for almost 10 years. Next, Quality Autism says, wonder how bad No Time to Die is going to be. I have no desire to watch it, and that's a bad thing, because I'm a huge James Bond fan, but they should have stopped with, like, I was fine never seeing another James Bond movie again after Skyfall, because Skyfall was so great, but they made Spectre, and Spectre I really enjoyed. I know a lot of people didn't like it, because they wrecked the whole Spectre arc again compared to how it is in the books. Like, I know Quality Autism, I'm pretty sure you've complained about it in the comments section before, but like, why do we need No Time to Die, and why do we need like I don't like using this word, but a woke sort of James Bond movie? Like, that's not what people go to see James Bond for. It isn't. Quality Autism, how Leia slowly became a full-time Jedi in the EU was great. Yeah, it made sense. Though I wish there was more of her training in the books or in a comic book or something. We don't get a whole lot of that. That's like I think that's a misstep in the EU's for the EU, in my opinion. Not a big one, but just like, come on. Jacob Ayers, I love how a lot of women in Star Wars are perfect 10s. That's true. That's true. It's a good series. Then that's how you know it's a quality of Star Wars right there. Next, only J-Man, is there space contraception in the Star Wars universe? Seems to me that Han and Leia would have had more than just one child, and being the smoothie that he is. Well, I don't know. That every time in like a book, it seems when they're going to hook up, until Tatooine Ghost, like, it doesn't happen. Like, there's some sort of something that happens that causes them to not, like, Han to get a case of the blue balls really bad. Moving on, Quality Autism says, I would say Diamonds Are Forever, Die Another Day, and Spectre are the bottom for me. These movies offended me. I will say Diamonds Are Forever is, I don't know. You Only Live Twice. They made Sean Connery look like a Japanese man, and that's like just racist. But Diamonds Are Forever is really stupid, and that's why, one of the reasons why I think Sean Connery didn't do another one till oh gosh, what is that? Never Say Never Again. Which Never Say Never Again is probably his best Bond film. But yeah, Diamonds Are Forever just sucks, and you could tell he didn't want to do it. Although I will say the opening to Diamonds Are Forever is really awesome, with him running around just like killing people with his bare hands. That's what we needed after George Lazenby. Spectre, I don't know. I think Spectre is better than Quantum of Solace if we're going to go the Daniel Craig route. But my top 3 worst, like the bottom of the barrel for me in James Bond movies at this point, is the worst is Die Another Day. Second would be Moonraker, because Moonraker is just the worst ripoff of Star Wars I've ever seen. And it's the height of stupid Roger Moore stuff. And then lastly, Timothy Dalton's License to Kill, because like Felix gets his legs fed to a shark and his wife is murdered, but it's okay because he's gonna go fishing with James Bond. Like, what the fuck? And Timothy Dalton's just you can tell that he was like an asshole to work with and no one wanted to be around him. And that's bad in like a Hollywood movie to see that. All right. Next, Jimbo Joe says, No Time to Die was supposed to be directed by Daniel Boyle, and I think writing it as well, but due to creative differences, he left. It would have been cool to see Danny work another James Bond movie. Okay. Next, Quality Autism says, yes, the way they handled Blofeld was just terrible, straight out of Austin Powers. That's why Austin Powers exists. It's both times it's just been goofy. And even the thing is, like, Donald Pleasance is a fantastic actor as the first Blofeld, but that it's just handled poorly. Rob D says, I know you hate Force Unleashed, but what did you think about the characters of Ram Koda, Kazdan Paradis, and Maris Brood? I don't remember the second and third one. Ram Koda's fine. Would you like to see them again? Well, we have to establish these characters prior to Force Unleashed. And you have to establish, since Force Unleashed is, for the worst, part of C canon, and it is just the shittiest piece of fucking anal waste. But, like, you have to tie up what happens in Force Unleashed 3. You have to do it. Don't make another game, though. We don't need a third Force Unleashed. He's gonna you're gonna have 3 lightsabers, gonna waddle around holding one between his legs. Are we gonna have like the lightsaber like rings from Spaceballs, like so he can have like Wolverine tusks of lightsabers? It's just fucking dumb. And they're gonna make it even easier so you can beat the game in 2 hours. And it'll be VR. There you go. Jacob Harris says, to be honest, the Man with the Golden Gun is my favorite James Bond movie. Christopher Lee does a fantastic Bond villain. It was my favorite as a kid. It's my second favorite Roger Moore. I think my favorite has to be Live and Let Die. Quality Autism says, New Jedi Order balance point established that Luke and Mara used the Force for protection. I have to move on from there. Then Quality Autism follows it up with, they made Connery look like Clinton from Yolt. Oh my god. Next, Jacob Ayers says he's always trying to get with Jan, but something's always interrupts. Then 8080Q says, I think one instance of Han getting blue balls is in the Valentine's comic special. That's true. I forgot that was a thing. But the one that always comes to mind is Truce of Bakura, when they have some like blueberry wine or something on the Millennium Falcon and they're in hyperspace, and it's just Han, Leia, and Chewie on the Falcon, I do believe. And Han is like wooing Leia. This is like a day after Return of the Jedi. And she's going through all sorts of emotions, like dealing with Vader being her father and stuff, which goes through the whole book. But he's trying to woo her and like bed her. And he has Chewie make up the captain's quarters, and Chewie just throws a bunch of pillows on the floor and makes a nest for them to fuck in, and it is the funniest thing. And Han is so embarrassed, and Leia thinks it's really funny, as I recall. And then Chewie's like, yeah, I made it civilized for them because it's up to Wookiee standards. I always enjoyed that one. Jimbo Joe says, the only James Bond movie I've seen is GoldenEye, and I enjoyed it. I'm interested in watching more along with the Timothy Dalton ones. There's only 2 of them. The first one's mediocre and the second one's shit. Quality Autism says, License to Kill was the closest to the Fleming books. I loved it. I might have loved it too if it was another actor as Bond. I just don't like Timothy Dalton as Bond. He's not George Lazenby, but I don't know. Only J-Man. I will, going back to this, I will say this with what Dalton does bring is he brings the misery that seems to be in the background of Bond's character from like losing his wife and stuff, and that's like the end of that continuity of from On Her Majesty's Secret Service is in License to Kill. So there's that. Only J-Man says, I plan on showing my daughter the despecialized editions for her first viewing when she's old enough. Good or bad move? I don't know. It's fine. Good luck finding them that don't. Good luck finding them on anything but VHS. So that's up to you. Because if you watch the DVD, it has some technical issues. It's not in the right aspect ratio, and there's a pixel bleed in it. And I fundamentally hate looking at things like that. So there's that. Yakface says, so basically Timothy Dalton is his character in The Rocketeer without the charm that's in The Rocketeer. Rocketeer's wonderful, and he's a wonderful villain in The Rocketeer. Star Prime says, hi, Jeremy. I've been a fan of your videos for a couple years now. Even though I disagree with some things you say, I still love the way you do your book reviews, especially bad books. Thank you. Star Prime goes on to say, the Clone Wars is honestly really hard to talk about because it causes a lot of continuity issues with the EU, but at the same time, it's very popular with a ton of fans. It does have its own fan base. I won't deny that. 8080Q says, I think they shoehorned in Kazdan Partos to the Jedi Council. I don't. Is he the crazy one on Rexus Prime? I'm literally not remembering this character. Star Prime says, it sucks that the original Clone Wars media is mostly forgotten in the mainstream. It is. It was a solid event. And I always say it's an event. It's a multimedia project. But it's like the greatest event of any franchise ever. And it's mostly forgotten. Quality Autism says, Han thinks about the time he and Leia were doing it on the floor in Crystal Star. Rob D says, if a third Force Unleashed were to happen, I could see them making it where you can choose whether you want to use a single blade, two blade, or double saber. Okay, I can see that too. You'll be really dumb as if he was wielding 2 double-bladed lightsabers. I wouldn't put it past them, though. Jimbo Joe says, have you seen any movies recently? I recently watched Mortal Kombat Legends Scorpion's Revenge and liked it. It's an animated Mortal Kombat film, by the way. Where have I've been mainly watching Highlander the series lately. I'm on season 3. For films, I watched Kurosawa's Seven Samurai very recently. Been going through the Kubrick library, so I watched Lolita, Doctor Strangelove, and rewatched A Clockwork Orange for the first time in probably 8 years, I think is the last time I watched Clockwork Orange. Not a huge fan of Clockwork Orange. I think it's a little overrated, but I understand why people love it. To me, I think Lolita... Oh, I also watched 2001: A Space Odyssey. I rewatched that. Watched it for the first time sober, and that was an experience of some of it's great and some of it isn't. But goddamn, that is one of the best looking science fiction movies I have ever seen. Uh, I will say though that I think Lolita is Kubrick's best film. I like the whole it's weird sexual aspects of it, and the complicated relationship that the main characters have, and just how it spirals absolutely out of control. Uh, 8080Q says yes. Kasdan Preparatus is the little guy on Raxus Prime. I think he's the same species as the one of the pod racers. Yes, the one that goes and then blows up. Yakface says, "Are there any casting differences you think would have made Star Wars better?" No, I think Kurt Russell would have been almost as good as Harrison Ford. Maybe in that first movie, but overall, no. Harrison Ford is the weakest of the actors in the original Star Wars. But as time went on, with specifically Empire Strikes Back, but also Jedi, his acting got better. Quality Autism, right? Do you think it's worth it to read Thrawn Treason? I really just want to get it over with, but can't get myself to read it. I don't know. Maybe. If you are a completionist, read it. Star Prime says it's really sad how Disney has spent years on their canon, yet a lot of books are meh or garbage. That doesn't amount to much. Yeah, they don't care. They really don't care. Only J-Man, do you enjoy any David Fincher films? I'm guessing Alien 3 not included. Actually, I really enjoy aspects of Alien 3. I do. I don't. Alien 3, if you're watching the AVP, I call it the AVP timeline, even though the AVP movies are not considered canon, but I will binge watch. I start with Alien, then I watch Aliens, then Predator, Predator 2, Alien 3, and that's where the good stuff ends, is Alien 3, which Alien 3 has issues. The director's cut is a lot better than the theatrical version, because you actually figure out who's who in the director's cut, which you can't in the theatrical version. But mainly, I love Alien 3 because it has. I said this the other night on Bryant's Nerd Pub's live stream. Alien 3 has the best score of that entire franchise, the entire Alien franchise. It is highly, highly underrated. It is so epic in scale. That being said, Alien 3 has some major issues and has some really dumb crap in it. I prefer, like, if I had my true Alien 3 to me is Alien Earthhive, the novel by Steve Perry. Though, for David Fincher films, I appreciate them, but I find them almost too much of human suffering to like. I really enjoy Fight Club. Seven, I appreciate. I don't regret watching it, but I never watched it again. It's the same with like Gone Girl. Is the same way. Although I'm pretty sure Ben Affleck went down on that woman, and that's what ruined his marriage. I think that's like actual sex in that film. But yeah, no. I don't know. David Fincher's fine. David Lynch, on the other hand, David Lynch is wonderful. Jacob Ayers says the second Mortal Kombat is one of the worst movies ever and has terrible stunts, but it has Ray Park in it before The Phantom Menace. That it does. He actually has been talking about being in Mortal Kombat Annihilation quite a bit on his Instagram recently. Quality Autism says, isn't it amazing that the live stream you were on yesterday and the live stream and this live stream right now, I could see both live on the same day? Time zones. Oh, that's funny. I didn't think of that. Star Prime says, in Attack of the Clones, there's a baby from Kasdan's race that's in the background playing around. Huh, never noticed it. Not surprising. George Lucas threw a ton of shit in the prequels to fill out the background. I like the Alien 3 assembly cut. Me too. If you're watching like the DVDs or the Blu-rays, it's the only one of those where there's no director intro to them, which is funny because he will never talk about making that film. Oh, I have a funny David Fincher story. So I went to a workshop right before COVID-19 really took effect and California shut down and like school got thrown to online. But this guy was the main storyboarder for Marvel and the Fast and the Furious movies. But one of his projects that taught him a lot was he was working on a remake of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And the director was David Fincher. And it never got made because Disney wanted a different actor than David Fincher wanted. And he said, fine, we're not making this film. And so it never got made. But they were like really in pre-production, like designing what this new 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was going to look like, which I think is pretty cool. Yakface says Fight Club is such a rewatchable film, Fincher film. Yes, it is. You get something different every time you watch it. That's why I appreciate it. Jimbo Joe says, speaking of bad or mediocre films, have you ever seen Steel starring Shaquille O'Neal or Fred Durst's The Fantastic? I've not seen the latter, but I have seen the former. I love how bad they are. They are some of my favorite guilty pleasure movies. I can't watch Steel. You know I can't watch Steel. Star Prime says, I love Aliens a lot, but I really liked a lot of the aspects of Alien 3. The soundtrack is amazing. Yes, if you can track down in the La La Land Records 2-disc special edition complete score, pick that fucker up. It's one of the best CD purchases I had. I had to buy a CD player so I could play it. It's that good. And it doesn't exist on vinyl, which Mondo Records needs to get on that. If they put fucking Prometheus on vinyl, then they need to put Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection on vinyl. Alien Resurrection score is kind of okay. It's more like a continuation of Alien's score. Jacob Ayers says, at Jimbo Joe, Steel is a classic. To be honest, no, it's not. It's in that era when the Shaq was the face of everything. That's why they made like Shaq Fu. Jacob Ayers, also Shaq is the king of bad movies, but he's freaking hilarious outside of basketball. Yeah, I love him hosting the NBA. He's such a weirdo. Only J-Man says, what are some of your favorite bands slash artists? Also, how long have you been a musician or played instruments? So we'll start with favorite bands. As you can tell here, huge Iron Maiden fan. Got to see them live. Iron Maiden, AC/DC, Accept, Judas Priest, Motorhead. Solo artist King Diamond is like the king of my satanic heart, even though I'm not satanic at all. I love Blue Oyster Cults. Alcatraz, I think, is a very underrated band made by Grand Bonnet, who was the second singer for Rainbow. I also love Rainbow. Dio, Van Halen to a certain extent. So, a lot of Van Halen is crap, though, with some good guitar playing. Sleep when I'm in a doom mood. Also Black Sabbath. More so Dio Black Sabbath than Ozzy Sabbath. Ozzy Sabbath peaked with the third album, Masters of Reality, and everything post that is just crap from the Ozzy end, because Ozzy is kind of overrated, if I want to be completely honest. Ozzy has survived as long as he has for two reasons. Number one, he has great bandmates that handle all of like making that music, so he only has to sing. Also, Sharon Osbourne handles all of that. It's also why you will never see most of the Black Sabbath catalog ever re-released on like any format ever again, because she made Ozzy sue Tony Iommi, who owned Black Sabbath, in order because they've run out. Probably they wanted more money, and the Osbournes reality show was over, and so they sued. So Ozzy owns half of the rights to Black Sabbath now, and is the stupidest thing because he's only made like a third of the catalog of music. And Tony Iommi is the only band member who's consistently even been in Black Sabbath. So yeah, it's weird. As for the second question, I've been playing guitar since I was 15, 16. 16. Actively. I classically trained in guitar initially. Now I've moved on to like prog and all sorts of different styles of playing. Currently, I play this beauty, which I have not shown on here, which is a Charvel DeSantis Model 1, which this has some aftermarket pickups. I bought this used, which was a good deal because I'm a big Charvel fan because the Charvels lived in paradise where I grew up. I actually got to see the Charvel's sons play at a little local festival we had called Johnny Appleseed Days, which was absolutely incredible. I still remember it, and I was six or seven. I also play a Gibson Les Paul Studio because I like the Studio's weight as opposed to any of the other Les Pauls. But before that, I played Strats. Well, Charvels are owned by Fender now, and it's technically a Strat. It's Strat shape. I've played a ton of different guitars. If you've been friends with me on Facebook for a long time, or I think early Instagram, I think I have some photos. I used to play an SG was my go-to guitar, but not so much now. So because I lost that in the fire. I also used to play PV. That was the first electric guitar I had was a PV Predator Plus from the 90s with its weird tiny headstock. It's basically like a Strat but shrunk. They're really easy to play. I mean, I almost bought a guitar last night. I almost bought an Yngwie Malmsteen scalloped American Fender Strat. It's just a beautiful guitar, and I kind of want a scalloped guitar, but that might be my treat for passing this semester. Let's move on to Jimbo Joe says, have you ever seen the Eric Andre show? No, I haven't. I watch a lot of TV. Rob D says, do you have any favorite video game franchises? Doom. That's probably Doom and Quake, maybe. If we want to go back to Jeremy as a kid, it would be Kingdom Hearts and Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, as well as Star Wars games. I love what LucasArts did in the early 2000s. Jacob Ayers says, him and Charles Barkley make me cry laughing so hard. Star Prime says, what's some of your favorite stories in the original Clone Wars media? I personally love the stuff that ties into and leads to Revenge of the Sith. I do too. I really like Quinlan Voss's undercover dark side arc. That's pretty cool. Also love Jabim like everyone else. Also a fan of Defense of Camino. Defense of Camino was pretty cool. Also, for novels, the First Republic Commando book is pretty awesome, and Labyrinth of Evil is the ultimate lead into Revenge of the Sith. All right, Quality Autism's heading out. See you later, dude. Thanks for joining so late. Jake Bear says, you a fan of hip hop, Jeremy? I was really into the whole hip hop thing when I was in actually elementary school because I wasn't allowed to listen to it, so I did anyway. I was a big Eminem, Dre, 50 Cent sort of thing. Moved out of it probably around the age 12 when I discovered AC/DC Back in Black, and along with other things. Also discovering, because grew up with my dad when I was a little kid, was really into blues, so I listened to a lot of B.B. King and Eric Clapton. I actually had the privilege of seeing Eric Clapton live when I was in high school, which was one of the best concerts I've ever went to. But yeah, hip hop's fine. I don't like modern hip hop. I don't like most modern music in general. Not from America, at least. America's gotten really stale with its music as a whole, unless it's bands. The older bands seem to like revitalize themselves again. Star Prime asks, he says it disappoints me. None of the old Star Wars cartoons prior to the Clone Wars are on Disney Plus. You and me both, my dude. Is there some plot to make the canon stuff only available? Probably because it is utter dog shit. Except for maybe early Rebels. Early Rebels is watchable. Only J-Man says, my favorite band is Radiohead. Take that as you will. I am a huge fan of their album Kid A. Specifically, their track, The National Anthem. Because at work, we used to play it and we just start breaking things in the warehouse and just throwing things in the garbage and acting like hooligans. It was a good time. Jimbo Joe says, not sure if you're aware of Ty the Tasmanian Tiger is now on the Switch and other systems. It's an HD remaster. I thought I saw it on Steam. I might pick it up on there because I don't play console anymore. I have a Switch, but I never play it. Star Prime says, I love Labyrinth of Evil. Got the hardcover, and on that subject, I love the hardcovers of Star Wars books. Even the Bantam books have gorgeous artwork when enlarged. In my opinion, I think the Bantam books have consistently the best covers of any era of Star Wars. New Jedi Order is an acquired taste that I don't think I ever quite acquired. To me, they're hit or miss. I enjoyed Legacy of the Forces covers. Some of them are a little goofy looking. Mainly Revelations, Kaitus's face is weird in that. Also, Fury, Ben Skywalker's face is weird too. But I really hate the photo covers they did for like the prequel era books for like 10 years. Those were hideous to look at. Not hideous, but bad Photoshop. Yakface says, I assume Disney has the rights to the 80s Star Wars cartoons, but I'm not certain, or maybe they don't realize their decent level of interest for them. I don't think they care. They have the rights to everything because Lucas owns everything outright at this point. The only thing they didn't own outright was the original Star Wars, and now they purchased 20th Century Fox, so they own it outright, which people, we need to get them to release a better 4K Ultra Blu-ray set that because they're doing that Skywalker saga nonsense 4K $250 set through Best Buy. I would only pay that if they had every version of every Star Wars movie released on them. Every different, because sometimes I'm in the mood to watch a certain special edition, sometimes I'm in the mood to watch a despecialized edition. Like, all of that needs to be put on the Blu-ray, and it needs to be like actually the right aspect ratio. Get on it. That would maybe somewhat win me back over to Disney being a good company. Jimbo Joe writes, with these Disney remakes coming out, I'm surprised that Disney hasn't thought of remaking Kazam. How does that surprise you? They're not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. That'd be like if they remade the Black Cauldron. They're not going to do that either. Jacob Ayers says, yeah, my dad listened to country music, so I got my love of country from him. Yeah. I'm a Johnny Cash fan. I don't like modern country. I had an ex that I dated for 2 years that was straight up like freaking. It's called The Blaze here. It's the country radio station. She'd blare that in her little compact Nissan Cube thing that she drove around, and I fucking hated it. Absolutely hated it. I don't know. It is such bland music, and to me, it starts like with like Keith Urban stuff. Although Keith Urban can actually play guitar. Yeah, I don't know. Modern country is awful to me. Star Prime says at least any cover is better than Tattooing Ghost that isn't even a real cover. It's that's up there with like Cestus. The Cestus Deception is to me on par with the Tattooing Ghost cover. Those are lame. Also, Survivor's Quest cover is pretty bad too. Jacob Harris says also Shaq would do a Kazam remake. He'd do anything because he's out of boredom or just because it's funny. Kazam 2, Genie in a Bottle, starring Brie Larson. Oh, you're talking about one of the worst actresses in Hollywood right there. Q says, is there a current way to watch the Ewoks cartoons? I have a bootleg of all of Droids. No. There is a collection of a couple Ewoks cartoons on DVD. That was an official Lucasfilm thing that came out in like 07, along with another companion DVD of a couple episodes of Droids. I found at a thrift store the Ewoks Halloween special on VHS, but there's not really any way of watching those. They may be on YouTube. I know the Highlander animated series is on YouTube, so nothing surprises me. Excuse me. That was gross. You didn't even have to taste it, people. As someone who doesn't have an issue with the special editions, even liking a lot of the changes, it baffles me that they never made the original versions of the original trilogy readily available. They claimed they did in 2007 when they released the original trilogy on DVD and individual versions, but it was in the wrong aspect ratio and it had pixel bleed and it looked horrendous. Yeah, so to me, what bothers me is Blade Runner did a 30th anniversary Blu-ray set, and they had every version of Blade Runner, including the work print, which no one had ever seen before. So you could just choose to watch whatever version you wanted. And to me, that's how you should release something like that. Star Prime says, thanks for the correction, Jacob. Then Jimbo Joe says, once you get things in order, and I'm sorry if I and others keep asking this question, will Backpedalers podcast continue? Backpedalers may get a special episode like once every couple years, but no, I don't. So, if we want to have real talk, Backpedalers was a joke podcast. Wholeheartedly a joke that Dylan and I were, other Dylan, not Dylan from Legends, Dylan from Backpedalers, for those of you who don't know, that was a secondary podcast I used to do with my friend Dylan. Well, Dylan and I were really gung-ho about it, and then my relationship with the girl I was dating at the time, for long story short, she treated me like dog shit and basically said I couldn't have friends anymore. And manipulated me so much that I agreed to this. I agreed to a lot of things in that relationship that they're still biting me in the ass 2 years later. Like, just the amount of bullshit she pulled that I will find. Like, she owes me like $4,000 and stuff. Like, it was ugly. And Backpedalers sort of died, and then it came back after we broke up. And Michael and Dylan and I made a couple episodes, and then we recorded 3 episodes that are dog shit and will never be released. because quite frankly, there's one good episode, and that's the Expendables trilogy review podcast. That episode is genuinely still funny to me out of all of those. But yeah, no, I don't know. I was in the talks with two different hosts, because I think that having a woman on the podcast would give better perspective on things and we could take it in a serious direction. But the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to just make another podcast that isn't Backpedalers and just do something different in the spirit of Backpedalers, but not batshit insane like Backpedalers, because those are a fucking pain in the ass to edit. Because there's just so many horrible things that are said in Backpedalers by my co-hosts that I would spend days editing out of the show, just like because you couldn't put that on anything, like some of the horrible things said. That's saying something because I kept a lot of crap in. My favorite is Willie Nelson. Right on. Star Prime says after the sequels, at the only thing I consider as the Skywalker saga is the 6 George Lucas movies and the EU. Yeah. Talk about that sequel trilogy is the most disjointed thing I've ever seen. Jacob Ayers says episode 7 and 8 should be the Ewok movies. Yeah, I don't. There's a trilogy of Star Wars spin-off movies pre the new canon, and that is the 2 Ewok movies and Dave Filoni's Clone Wars, and all 3 of them are awful. The Ewok movies are more watchable than Dave Filoni's Clone Wars, though. But Dave Filoni's Clone Wars got a worldwide theatrical release, and I'm not sure why. Star Prime, I honestly really liked what George did with the prequels, especially compared to the sequels. At least in my opinion, George told a solid story with a lot of ideas, locations, and concepts I love. I'll second that. The acting's appalling in those, and some of the writing's bad, but the concepts are great because George is a really good idea man. Jimbo Joe says, if you don't want to continue Backpedalers podcast, it's all good, or just make a new podcast in general. I'm fine with that. Me too. I just don't know when that's going to be. Jimbo Joe then follows up with, while I appreciate George Lucas wanting to do something different with the prequels, there are many reasons why he needed to be put on a leash, whether fans want to hear it or not. They should have been directed by someone else. That is very true. Jacob Ayers says, Jeremy, can I please know what drugs you're on to slander the Ewok movies? It's called I saw them as an adult, so I don't have the nostalgia over them. I appreciate what they accomplished on a low budget. And to me, they're kind of wholesome. More so Caravan of Courage than Battle for Endor. Battle for Endor, I think, is pretty lame. Caravan of Courage is a bit better. They've got some good stuff going on for them, but I don't know. I saw them probably at the age of 22, and it was like, what the fuck am I looking at? Not the worst thing I've seen, because trust me, Jimbo Joe knows the amount of schlock I watch on a regular basis. So there's that. I mean, have you all seen Veronica yet? Glenn Danzig is a fucking goblin and thinks he can make movies. It's funny enough that Glenn Danzig thinks he can make music that people like. Although, for some reason, Misfits has a fan base. I don't get it. I've never understood the appeal of Glenn Danzig in general. They are classics. To a lot of people, they are, just not to me. They have Wilford Brimley in the What's Not to Love. Wilford Brimley's been in some fucking shit, though. I always love seeing Wilford Brimley, but there's some dog shit that he's been in. Rob D, do you think there were any clones that would gun down their Jedi generals even without Order 66?
Not unless you follow Dave Filoni's Clone Wars, not really. Unless the only exception to that, if we're not following Filoni's Clone Wars, because like in the Cestus Deception, there had up to that point there had never been a clone that betrayed an order or disobeyed an order. That's a key point in Cestus Deception. The Null Arc Troopers that Karen Travers introduces in 000 would wholeheartedly kill Jedi if it was in their best interests. That they were supposed to be terminated, and Cal Skirata uh, saved them, saved some, as many as he could. Most of them had been euthanized, but like Ordo would. If Etain had been more obnoxious in 000, Ordo would have taken her out back like the dog that ruined Christmas. It just fucking blown her stupid, shitty Jedi brains out. And we wouldn't have the problem of Darman getting her fucking pregnant and having the dumbest fanfic storyline in Karen Travis's books. Jimbo Joe, I know about the schlock you watch. Since you loved watching crappy stuff, you should watch Fred Durst, the fantastic due to how bad and crazy it is. It even has John Travolta saying weird stuff. Oh. Why do you want me to watch The Fanatic? I don't get this. Jimbo Joe said that we should do a backpedalers on The Fanatic. And I think Dylan and I both said no. I hate Fred Durst. Like, I think he's garbage. And I wouldn't want to watch a movie he did. Glenn Danzig's thing is, the whole thing is just, it looked like porn. Like it was the lighting of porn, and it had porn stars in it. And they couldn't act, which I don't expect porn stars to really be able to act like on any sort of level. They're mattress actresses. They aren't like actresses typically, unless it's Cameron Diaz. Cameron Diaz was in like a weird bondage porno back in like the late 80s. I mean, Stallone was also in a porno. There are actors that did porn in order to pay the bills, but that's not the same as being a porn star. But they're the better actors in that. And Veronica, everyone else is doing like a terrible French accent. Star Prime says, I was reading one of those old Star Wars character guides, and I saw the girl from the Ewoks movie, and even all of the droids cartoons mention a C3PO page. I was like, wow, that's cool. It's canon. Yeah. Droids and Ewoks. The cool thing with droids and Ewoks is the comics for those cartoons. There's a crossover, and it explains why the Ewoks worship C3PO as a god. And that is like the thing to read with those comics, because they're not great, but that little thing is a nice continuity thing with Jedi. Star Prime says, I was surprised. Only J-Man says, thanks for all the amazing insight, Jeremy and chat. Look forward to catching you next time here or on the Geeks Attic. Take care, everyone. Later, dude. Jacob Ayers says, to be honest, the prequels hate completely stopped since The Last Jedi came out, and that's one of the only good things from the sequel trilogy. Yeah, the sequel trilogy is absolute dog shit as a trilogy. I mean, it barely is a trilogy. It's like the new Thrawn trilogy. That doesn't feel like a trilogy either. Yeah, the only new canon trilogy that feels like a trilogy is made by Chuck Wendig, and that's sad. Those shitty Aftermath books are definitely a trilogy, and I hate it. Oh man, my throat is killing me. Solely talking for nearly 2 hours. That's supposed to be what it's like for my professors who have long lectures. Star Prime says, I honestly feel like it's okay to not like the prequels, but my problem was especially online people acting really rude. Yeah, that came from the whole Red Letter Media Plinkett reviews, which are funny reviews. But that's where the prequel hate, I think, really comes from. That and the People versus George Lucas documentary, which I don't think I thought was a cool documentary back in the day, but looking back on it now, it's not that great. Oh man, I should have brought a beer up here. We could have a drunken live stream. We remember the last time we had a drunken live stream? That was a good time. I dislocated my tailbone during that. Jimbo Joe says there's even a scene from Filter grabs moose antlers and runs around the table yelling, "Moose is in the house! Watch out!" What? Yeah, I've watched the half in the bag review of the Fanatic, and no, that was enough for me. I mean, nothing will dethrone Zardoz as like one of the best films I've ever seen ever in the shit department. Mainly because people who are fans of Zardoz, they come in two camps. There's the people like me that think it's the funniest thing ever, and then there's people that think it's like the best surrealist piece of art they've ever seen ever. You have the weirdest conversations with people with watch Zardoz. For anyone who hasn't seen Zardoz, you need to watch Zardoz. It's Sean Connery running around in like a red diaper and gun bandoliers. It's hilarious. It's just art house shit from the early 70s. And there's a giant stone head called Zardoz that says the gun is good and the penis is evil. It's just nonsense. Rob T says, if your school opened up a Star Wars EU class, would you offer to teach it or just be a student? Man, I'd tell them hire Matt and have him do teleconferences because they do that at my at the state university I go to. There is a teacher who teaches on the East Coast, and she has Skype, or I think it's actually Zoom class where everyone, it's like in the basement of the library, and she broadcasts in, which is interesting. Jimbo Joe says, I've heard and seen some of Zardoz. It's weird. It's fucking funny. Star Prime says, honestly, when it comes to Star Wars movies, I don't think anything will come close to my experience with Revenge of the Sith. I saw it back in 2005. I grew up with it. A lot of media surrounding the movie. Star Prime, how old are you? Because I feel the same way about the prequels. Like Phantom Menace was the first film I ever saw in the theater, and I was like 4. I saw it 3 times. I saw all the prequels in the theater, and I even saw Dave Filoni's Clone Wars in the theater. I've seen basically every Star Wars release, with the exception of the Phantom Menace. Well, the ones I was alive for, obviously. I didn't see, with the exception of the special editions, because I was barely 3, maybe 2 when those came out, because I don't remember them getting theatrically released. I remember us having the gold VHS set, but I don't remember their theatrical release. And I didn't see the 3D release of Phantom Menace because I fundamentally hate 3D movies. Star Prime says, I mean to say I saw the theater back in 05. I was born in 2002. Oh, shit. Got a kid in here. Next thing you're an adult now. Gosh. I went on, you say, what year? 17, 18 then? I can tell this ridiculous story of I went on a date with someone last year, and we were talking about September 11th. It came up because I remember September 11th. Like I was 6 when that happened, and I remember watching it on television. And she was like, "Oh, okay." And like we like there was an awkward silence. I'm like, "How old were you?" And she's like, "Oh, I was like 2 months old." And I'm like, "Oh, that you're too young for me to date. Sorry, can't do that." I watched the OT, the original trilogy on VHS, and the prequels on DVD. I actually owned the Phantom Menace VHS. I got it for my birthday. I turned 5. No, I turned 6. Yeah. I turned 5 the year Phantom Menace came out in the theater. Then Star Prime says, I saw the Clone Wars movie in theaters too, and yeah, looking back, it was bad. It was just a bad experience for me on top of it being a bad movie because I kept getting kicked by this kid. And I was like 14 at the time, and I felt like too old to be there. And I was there with my dad and my sister, and they were irritated, and I almost grabbed a kid by like the his like shirt collar and threw him. Like I was just not in a mood to like deal with like shitty children. It's also one of the reasons I don't like going to the movie theater, especially if it's not like an. I like early morning movie theater if I'm going to go to like a public theater. Also, in our town, Tinseltown does discount Tuesdays. It's the only day of the week I will go to the theater. Um, so there's that. I just love early morning movie theater watching because no one's there. All American Cornbread joins us. He says, I remember when I was a kid, I saw the Clone Wars and I was kicking a 14-year-old back. Oh, you're funny. Real funny guy. Oh man, I need a beer. I'm half tempted to get a beer, but I don't want to drink at 4:00 in the afternoon. Even though it's a Saturday, I don't really feel like being that kind of trashy today. Drinking my Pabst Blue Ribbon that in the afternoon. Star Prime says Sith was my first Star Wars movie, and it introduced me to Star Wars. I was 3 in 2005. Then I saw the other 2 prequels on DVD and the 2004 DVD set of the original trilogy. Oh, right on. Um, Man, I remember pre-ordering the original trilogy at FYE. I was about 10 years old in 04. FYE was still a record store that also sold DVDs out of desperation. We pre-ordered it, and I actually had the 2004 posters for each movie, which are terrible Photoshop. But I thought they were really cool, and I planned to frame them when I moved out, but they burned in the fire. I kind of don't care though. Out of all the things I lost, that's like pretty low on the list of things I give a shit about. Jimbo Joe said, I'm going to get off. I have some things to do and need to work on something. All right. Have a good one, dude. Thank you for joining us. Love that Iron Maiden shirt. Me too. I like this one. This is one of the few shirts I have that's from before the fire. It's kind of ripped a little bit, but it's my Trooper shirt. I used to have a ton of Iron Maiden shirts. My favorite one was this concert shirt. You'll probably see it in some of my older videos. It was Eddie was riding on a grizzly bear, jumping, like destroying the Golden Gate Bridge. And I loved that thing. That's a very rare shirt. It was specifically, Iron Maiden will find the weirdest excuses to have a world tour at this point. They were touring to promote the re-release of Made in England 88, and for that tour they brought back a bunch of the props they used on previous tours. It was a really cool concert. Mainly I think they played every song off of Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, so if you're into like the proggy Maiden stuff, that's where it's at. But that shirt was made specifically for the 3. It was only sold in California, and they only went to 3 cities. They went to Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Wheatland, California, which is outside Sacramento, which is where I saw them. And it was awesome. It was the first time I was in a pit at a concert. I got beer spilt all over me, and I got thrown. That was a good time. And I'm 5'11", so it takes a bit, and I'm not like a skinny guy, so like it was really big dude flung me. That wasn't the first time I've been flung. I got flung at a Dropkick Murphys concert. That was pretty bad. Yeah. Let's move on to Jacob Ayers. Do you think Harrison Ford will die before Indy 5 is made, or do you think it will actually get made? I don't want him to be in it. It's so frustrating. Honestly, I'm half tempted to say bring back Sean Patrick Flannery. from the Young Indiana Jones TV show. 'Cause I don't give a rat's ass about it. I don't. No one wants to see an old your grandpa as Indiana Jones. I'm gonna take that from Red Letter Media. Like no one wants to see Grandpa Indiana Jones. Star Prime. Actually, I'll go back to this because the only good thing that will probably come out of Indy 5 will be the re-release of the Bantam Indiana Jones books, and they'll probably do Marvel Epic collections of all the Indiana Jones comics because those are really out of print, and I really want to collect those. Star Prime as a prequel and special edition kid. I'm gonna be honest. I really didn't like the Naboo. I really didn't like the no in the Blu-ray release of Return of the Jedi. I'm fine with it in Sith, but no Jedi. I literally got the 2004 DVDs again just to have. Yeah, no, I don't like any of the most of the special edition changes unless it's color correction and updating the sound. Return of the Jedi with Vader's not saying no. Oh, I found it more powerful when he was silent in that scene. Me too. Yeah, most of what they add to the original trilogy is utter nonsense. I mean, dubbing over Boba Fett with Jango Fett's voice. Of course, they're going to sound different. They grew up differently. They're going to have different speech patterns. Jacob Ayers says, to be honest, I doubt anyone at Lucasfilm even know about indie books and comics. Probably people in the story group do. Because some of them, because the Indiana Jones has a stronger continuity than Star Wars does. Mainly, I think George Lucas has more hand in it. He wrote a timeline for Young Indiana Jones, and that's expanded on the Young Indiana Jones, not just the series and the Indiana Jones movies with Harrison Ford, but also things like the Young Indiana Jones kids books, the Bantam Indiana Jones novels, and both the Marvel comics and the Dark Horse comics are all in continuity together. Star Prime, I think the EU had a possible retcon that Boba's helmet has a voice modulator. I don't care either way. It's fine. Just leave the original actor in there. Yeah, I've not heard it, but I've not heard everything, so there's that. Jacob Ayers says, yeah, the expanded adventures are still canon. Yes. I'm really wanting to get those Bantam paperbacks because they're not hardcovers, unfortunately, but they are so hard to get now. They're so expensive. It's more expensive than collecting the Highlander books. That's saying something. Those are starting to get expensive too. Star Prime says, I love Indiana Jones, but I didn't even know it had us an EU. Yeah, that's because Zahn's trilogy took off and left Indiana Jones in the dust. Indiana Jones sort of fizzled out with Young Indiana Jones, the TV show, because that show is shit. With a handful of interesting episodes that have weird celebrity cameos. You see a very young Catherine Zeta-Jones and a very young Daniel Craig in one episode. Christopher Lee has a cameo. Ian McDiarmid has a cameo. There's all sorts of people show up. I mean, Harrison Ford even is in one episode telling a story, and it's like the best part of that series. Jacob Ayers. Also, I like a lot of special edition changes. They added EU content into the movies. Yeah, like the swoop bike stuff's kind of neat. I don't know. Some of it's unnecessary. A lot of it's unnecessary, though. Star Prime, it kind of sucks. Lucasfilm hasn't done anything with Indiana Jones for a long time. Yeah, but it's honestly kind of a blessing at the same time with how poorly they treated Star Wars. You know what else they don't do anything with? Willow. They had the awful Chris Claremont Willow books, and that's it. The greatest part of the Indiana Jones EU is the video games, not Staff of Kings, I can tell you that. Staff of Kings is pretty terrible, but I like Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. In fact, I just bought it again on PC. A lot of them are interesting point and click like adventure games too, which I think is interesting. Star Prime says, wait, Count Dooku and the Emperor are in Indiana Jones canon? Yes. And Christopher Lee is like, he's not a count, but he's like, he shows up in one of the World War One episodes, and Ian McDiarmid shows up as a friend of Indy's father that he ends up staying with for a short period of time when after he runs away to before he enlists in the Belgian army in World War One. Jacob Ayers says they're making a Willow Disney Plus series. Ugh, no, leave it alone. Rob D, do you think people would go to a club that actually had real Twilight girls, not just people in costumes? Tristan from Inox Nest would. I might. Oh, Twilights are cool. I mean, like, I have some diverse taste in women, obviously. Star Prime, for the short screen time he had, I love Christopher Lee in Attack the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. He's such a fantastic actor. I wish he was in them more, but he was working on Lord of the Rings at the same time. He is the best actor in Attack of the Clones by far. He is so good in that. And my favorite scene in that is when he and Obi-Wan's being held a prisoner, and they Dooku tries to persuade him to the dark side. That's cool. That's a cool scene. All American Corporate says, I only like Keldor women. It's better than Bothan women. Just saying. It's a lot of hairballs, my dude. I love that it's finally got at the 2-hour mark has hit the rock bottom of like pervert talk. I'm shocked it took as long as it did. Let's see. Star Prime says, I have weird Star Wars opinions. One of my favorite locations in Star Wars is the Droid Factory in Attack of the Clones. I love the design and aesthetic of the factory. I really liked it too when I first saw it. I'm going to wrap this up in another 15, 20 minutes. My throat is starting to not want to work anymore. Not wanting to speak. Also, I'm pretty hungry, so there's that too. Any closing questions or anything? While we wrap this this up, like you should be wrapping your willies before you get down with the sex. That's stupid. Don't laugh at that. Looking at you, Rob D. Don't laugh at that. It's just become dead. I got another pedal for my pedal board, although I put my pedal board away. I got a synth pedal. I don't know if I like it or not. It's kind of not accurate with its like picking up your guitar when you strum quickly. It has like a delay to it, and I don't care for that. It's kind of horse shitty. There's that. Oh man, this has been fun. Let's do this more often. We got a couple of them. Sweary Hands, hi Chainsaw, hello. And Straight Dave. Hey my dude. Hey, how's it going? Sweary Hands, how do you feel about the guitar from Guitar Hero 3? Which is that like the SG you play? Like the controller guitar, like the default one? I mean, I used to play SGs and I thought it was fine. I'm not a wasn't really super big into Guitar Hero. I was more of a Rock Band fan. I was really into the first Rock Band, pretty hardcore. It felt more like playing the guitar. And then I actually played guitar and I'm like, oh, this is nothing like playing a rhythm game at all. Star Prime, I personally liked the storyline a lot and thought it was really interesting, especially Obi-Wan's investigation of the Separatist plot. Yeah, right on. Yeah. I like the aesthetic of the SG. Didn't like it was wired though. Wireless was more where it was at. Adam Bonner, hi, I'm from Canada. Hello. What color was the Guitar Hero 3? Was it the red one? Oh, the color of the buttons? Eh, I don't know. I had an aftermarket Guitar Hero guitar that someone gave me that was wireless, that was like a strap body. And so that was the only one I played, really. Like, a lot. And it didn't work that well. Rocky Balls, are you into anime? A little bit. I've dabbled. I'm a big fan of Cowboy Bebop and Space Dandy, my two go-tos. Also really enjoyed Full Metal Alchemist, both the original series and Brotherhood. So, but other than that, not a whole lot. I've watched a few episodes of Neon Genesis Evangelion, but I've never seen any of the movies. I also love, if we're talking feature length film anime movies, love Akira and love Ghost in the Shell. What was the message you sent earlier? Because so I don't miss it. Jupe Grinnell, did you ever use an ice barrage? If you didn't, you don't know what I mean. No, I don't think. Let's see. Rocky Balls Green. No, no, no. That'd be a copyright claim. You can watch it again because it will be on YouTube, so you can go back. I don't know. My mom doesn't live here, so there's that. Rob D, gotta go. Later, dude. Oh, right on, dude. And I'm gonna cut it there because I've been on for over 2 hours and the train's coming. So thank you all for joining me. Have a good day.